Your teacher is not famous yet. He's just a thin, strange-looking man sitting alone at the edge of a forest, pulling weeds out of the ground with his bare hands. Not because he's a gardener, because he's furious. A king just threw him out of his own court, laughed at his face, had him removed by a servant in front of hundreds of people. And instead of going home, this man pulled out every weed he could find, root by root, until the earth was bare. You are 7 years old. You watch him from across the clearing. You don't know it yet, but that angry man just decided to tear down an empire. And he's going to use you to do it. Your name is Chandragupta, and this is the beginning. You don't come from palaces. You come from dust. Raised by hunters in a small village, your earliest memory isn't silks or feasts. It's playing kings with the other children. You sit on a rock and pretend it's a throne, and you give orders and your friends obey. You don't know why you're good at it. You just are. Chanakya saw you doing exactly that, giving orders to the other children, commanding them like you were born to it. He watched you for a while without saying a word. Then he walked over. He didn't ask your name. He asked what you would do if a robber entered the village. You told him. He asked 3 more questions. You answered all of them. He nodded slowly, the way a man nods when something he suspected turns out to be true. Then he said, "Come with me. There is a school far from here. You are going to learn things that no one in this village has ever learned." You had no reason to trust him. You went anyway. Taxila is unlike anything you have ever seen. 10,000 students from across the known world, from Babylon, from Greece, from China, all gathered in one city to learn. The streets smell like ink and argument. Scholars debate in doorways. Students recite texts at dawn before the birds have started. The courses number 68: warfare, medicine, philosophy, mathematics, politics, astronomy, economics, military strategy. You will study almost all of them, not because you choose to, because your teacher has a plan and your education is part of it. Chanakya teaches differently from the others. Other teachers give you answers. He gives you problems. He puts you in situations where there is no good solution, only the least bad one, and he watches how you think. He doesn't care if you get it right. He cares if you get it honestly. The first lesson he ever teaches you is not in any text. He points at the weeds by the side of the road and says, "Notice that I always pull them from the root. A man who only cuts the stem will be back here tomorrow. A man who finds the root never needs to return." You're 8 years old. You file that away. At 10, the lessons get harder. He teaches you statecraft, not as theory, but as survival. He teaches you that a spy network is not a tool of tyrants. It is the nervous system of any kingdom that wants to stay alive. He teaches you that the man who smiles widest in the king's court is almost always the most dangerous. He teaches you to taste your food carefully, not because it might be bad, but because someone might want you dead, and they are rarely strangers. He teaches you that the line between ally and enemy is not where most people think it is. It is not drawn in battle. It is drawn in banquets. Your friends at Taxila think he is strange, cold, too serious. They don't understand that he is not teaching you to be a scholar. He is teaching you to be a weapon, and a weapon needs to know exactly what it's for. One evening, he tells you something you never forget. He says, "A king who cannot stand alone cannot stand at all." You ask him what that means. He says, "You'll understand when the time comes." At 14, he tells you the truth. Not about the lessons, about him. About the king named Dhana Nanda, who rules the greatest empire in India from his throne in Pataliputra. About the day Nanda expelled Chanakya publicly from the place of honor in his court. About the vow Chanakya made in that moment. He broke his sacred thread and swore not to tie it again until he overthrew the Nanda dynasty from the throne of Magadha. He looks at you when he finishes the story. He doesn't say, "This is why I found you." He doesn't have to. You already understood it the moment the words left his mouth. You are not just a student. You are the answer to a 12-year vow. You sit with that for a long time. Another boy might have run. Another boy might have been angry at being used. But you think about the weeds and the roots, and you understand that you and your teacher are not so different. You both have something that was taken from you. You both want it back. He trained you for 7 to 9 years before he considered you ready. 7 to 9 years of waking before dawn, of studying tactics and then debating them, of learning how an empire falls not from outside attack, but from the slow rot of corruption inside its own walls. He teaches you about your first failed campaign the way a surgeon teaches about a wound, by making you look at it directly. You and Chanakya attacked the heart of the Nanda Empire first, and failed. It was a woman scolding her son over hot porridge that showed you your mistake. The boy had burned his fingers reaching into the center of the bowl instead of starting at the edges. Chanakya heard it, stopped walking, and turned to you. That, he said, is exactly what we did wrong. You went back. You started at the edges, village by village, province by province, until the center had nowhere left to stand. In 321 BCE, you walk into Pataliputra. The king is forced to surrender. He is spared his life and told to leave with his 2 wives and a daughter, and as much as he can carry in a single chariot. The treasuries of the most powerful empire in India are now yours. The throne that your teacher was thrown from is now yours. You are 20 years old. You sit on it, and for a moment you think about the rock in the village where you used to play king as a child. It feels the same, cold, hard, heavy with the weight of everyone watching. Chanakya stands to the side of the room, not on the throne, not anywhere near it. He is a Brahmin scholar with untied hair and worn sandals, and he looks completely out of place in a palace. You motion for him to sit beside you. He shakes his head. The teacher does not sit where the student rules, he says. That is the whole point. He stays as your prime minister. He wrote the Arthashastra, every lesson he ever taught you, assembled into a book, not as a memory of your education, but as a living manual for everything that comes next. Running an empire turns out to be harder than conquering one. Chanakya knew this. It is why the training lasted 9 years instead of 9 months. Every day brings a new problem he already prepared you for. A governor in the east is skimming taxes. You know what to do. A foreign king sends a gift that seems too generous. You know what that means. A minister praises you in public for a decision you didn't make. You know exactly why. You realize slowly that this is the real shape of what he gave you. Not an army, not a throne, a way of seeing. A habit of looking at every situation and asking, what is the root? There is one evening, late in your reign, that you remember differently from all the others. Chanakya comes to you not as a minister, not as a strategist. He comes as an old man who is tired. He sits with you in the quiet part of the palace, and he doesn't say anything for a long time. Then he says, I had a student before you. He failed the test. I almost chose him instead. You look at him. I tested you both, he says. He could not do what was necessary. You could. That is the only reason you are sitting here, and he is not. You don't ask what the test was. You already know. There are things a ruler must be willing to do that a student never fully understands until the crown is on his head. And there are things a teacher must be willing to do that a student can only understand much later, when he is old enough to see what it cost. You look at the man who found you in a clearing, pulled you from a village, spent 9 years turning a shepherd boy into an emperor, and asked for nothing in return. Not land, not gold, not even credit. He still hasn't retied his hair. You realize he never untied the thread to mark victory. He untied it to mark a beginning, and he decided somewhere along the way that the beginning never ended, that the work was never finished enough to call done. Chanakya was cremated by his disciple Radhagupta, who succeeded him as prime minister of the Mauryan Empire. The greatest political mind India ever produced died the same way he lived, without ceremony, without a palace, without a throne. He left behind a book that management schools still study. Military academies still teach. The lessons are the same as they were in a clearing in 330 BCE, when a furious scholar pulled weeds from the ground and a 7-year-old boy watched. Find the root. A king who cannot stand alone cannot stand at all. The teacher does not sit where the student rules. You are Chandragupta Maurya. You built the largest empire India had ever seen. You unified a subcontinent that no one before you had managed to hold together. You defeated the successors of Alexander the Great. You did all of it before you were 30, and every single day of it, you were still just the student of an angry man who got thrown out of a room. He just made sure you were the most dangerous student who ever lived. History remembers emperors, but empires are rarely built by emperors alone. Somewhere behind every throne, there is a mind shaping the future. If you want to see the next story of the strategist who changed the world, subscribe. Because the next lesson from history might be even more dangerous.